my fellow friends and followers, it's me Retromania, and in today's video we are talking about Fire Emblem from the very beginning all until today. Fire Emblem, it's a tactical strategy JRPG developed by Intelligent System and published by our good old friends at Nintendo. The development of the first game started as a dojo project by Shouzou Kaga and 3 other developers. Although the game was developed by a really small development team with not a huge budget and not that much of a skill, the game turned out really well, really good, and was a huge success. At least in Japan, but it was also only developed in Japan, so yeah. Its success caused the development of further games in the series. Kage headed the development of each entry all until the release of Thracia 776. After Thracia 776, Kage left Intelligent Studio and founded his own game studio called T-Ring Saga. No game of the series were localized outside of Japan all until 2 characters, Marth and Roy, were included as playable characters in the 2001 fighting game Super Smash Bros. Melee. So without Super Smash Bros. Melee we would have waited much longer for a Fire Emblem game to arrive here in the West. Maybe they would never arrive, so thanks Melee, I salute you, you did an amazing job. I think now we can start talking about the games one by one, starting with the very first Fire Emblem game. The first Fire Emblem game that started all was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light in April 20, 1990, only in Japan. The game started development in 1987, so it took around 3 years to finish this game. The initial plan was to create set-piece graphics for key story moments similar to PC games from that time. Sadly, the MMC3 chip had a really big problem, a memory problem. It only had 1 MB of memory, so the team needed to decide to cut out the idea of set pieces. The game just recently got an official localized release on the Nintendo Switch for the first time. Yes, there was also a remake, but we will get there when we get there. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light was re-released on the Nintendo Switch in December 4, 2020 to celebrate Fire Emblem's 30th anniversary. I have huge respect for the first game, because without it we wouldn't have Fire Emblem as we know today. Fire Emblem Gaiden, it's the second game in the Fire Emblem series. It released in March 14, 1992, only in Japan. Many of the early games will be Japanese exclusive only. And yes, I know Fire Emblem Echo Shadow of Valentia, it's the remake of the second game, but it's too early to talk about it now, I will mention it later in the video. The director of the second game, it still Shouzou Kaga, and this time Kaga tried to fix the pacing issues they had with the first game. You remember how the first game had some development problems because of the low capacity of the MMC3 chip? Well, the second game got a better chip, a MMC4 chip, because of the development issues of the first game, of the shortcomings of the first game, they developed a better chip, a MMC4 chip. The hard work did pay out. The game sold over 324,000 units as of 2002, what it's a really good number considering it was a Japanese only game. The next game in our list is Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem. It released in January 21, 1994, again Japan only. This is a very unique game because it contains 2 games in one physical release. This game serves as both a remake of the first game and a sequel to the first game, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, so it's both a sequel and a remake. Kaga was again the main director and the game was received extremely well. Many game journalists praised the game for the improved gameplay and visuals. It was the best-selling first week Fire Emblem game all until Fire Emblem Awakening in 2012. The game sold 776,338 units by 2002 and became a cult classic in Japan. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, it's the 4th game in the Fire Emblem series. The main director, it still Shouzou Kaga, and the game came out in May 14, 1996 in Japan. The game saw some development issues because of the addition of romance option and expandable storytelling. The game met with critical and commercial success, but let's move on to its sequel game, Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Fire Emblem Thracia 776, it's the sequel to Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. It's set in a near future, let's say a time skip of the world of Genealogy of the Holy War. The game's main director, it still Shouzou Kaga, although sadly this will be his last game where he will be the main director. The game was released on Super Famicom in January 21st, 2000 in Japan. Next we have Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. It released in March 29th, 2002 on the Game Boy Advance, and again only in Japan. This is also the first portable handheld experience of Fire Emblem on the go. For this new game we also have 2 new directors. Yes, two. One it's Toru Narihiko and the second one it's Masuyaki Horikawa. This is a huge change for the series. Not only do we have a new director, actually two new directors, but it's also the first portable Fire Emblem experience. The game was well received from both game journalists and players all over Japan, and it sold over 345,000 units. Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, it's the first game we got localized overseas. Despite never releasing in the West, Roy's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee contributed to the localization of the series. Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, it's a prequel to Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, so it still features Roy as the main protagonist. In the West, the prequel Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade was renamed to just Fire Emblem. Probably for market purposes, because we never got a Fire Emblem game before in the West, so naming it just Fire Emblem made more sense, I guess. It released in April 25, 2003 in Japan, in November 3, 2003 in America, and in July 16, 2004 in Europe. The directors of this game are Taeko Kanehada and Kentanoru Mishimura. Fire Emblem The Sacred Stone released on October 7, 2004 in Japan, May 23, 2005 in America, and November 4, 2005 in Europe. This game actually had three main directors working on it: Sachiko Wada, Taiki Bakata, and our good old friend Kentaro Mishimura. When released, it sold over 230,000 units during 2004, with further 90,000 units being sold over in North America after debut. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, it's a new console title released since Thracia 776. The game released on GameCube in April 20th, 2005 in Japan, October 17, 2005 in America, and November 4th, 2005 in Europe. The main director of this game was Masuyaki Horikawa, and this was the first game that features 3D graphics, fully animated cutscenes and voice acting. Because of the jump from 2D to 3D, the higher development cost and higher development time, the game had some issues here and there. The game was poorly received by game journalists in the West, claiming that the graphics are bad. The game did quite well in Japan and was a huge success there. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, it's the direct sequel to the previous game, Path of Radiance. The game released in February 22, 2007 in Japan, November 5, 2007 in America, and March 14, 2008 in Europe. The main director is Taeko Kaneda. He was also the main director of Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade. The game received some positive feedback, but also a lot of negative feedback. Most of the critique was directed at the lack of motion controls, because it was a Nintendo Wii game and because the game had an extremely hard difficulty setting. This was a very solid game, what had its flair and spice and what deserves better. Next we have Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, and if that name rings a bell, it should, because this is a remake of the first game, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. Yep, we got a remake of the very first game, and obviously this one is localized worldwide. It released in August 7, 2008 in Japan, December 5, 2008 in Europe, and February 16, 2009 in America. It follows the story of the first game, but obviously with expanded gameplay, better visuals, better animations, and everything what comes with a remake. This game had two directors, one was Masuyaki Horikawa and the second one was Masaki Tawara. The game sold fine in Japan with estimated numbers of over 250,000 units. We will soon get to the Fire Emblem game, what made Fire Emblem so popular, but for now let's jump to the next game. Fire Emblem The New Mystery of the Emblem, you probably never heard of this one, well that's because it's Japanese exclusive. How you can see, Fire Emblem didn't do so well in the West, and that's why this game never got localized. This game is also a remake of the game Fire Emblem The Mystery of the Emblem, what also never came to the West. The game released in July 15, 2010, and the main directors for this game are Kohei Maeda and Hideki Araki. Fire Emblem Awakening, it's arguably the biggest twist in the Fire Emblem series. I don't think Fire Emblem would have died if this game was received poorly, but it would probably be the end of Fire Emblem in the West, so Europe, America and Australia. So it was a huge deal, at least for us. Intelligent System made a last-ditch effort to revive the IP in the West with huge success. The game sold over 2.2 million units worldwide. Yes, worldwide, but still a huge number the company has never seen before. The main directors for this game are Kohei Maeda and Genki Yokota. Fire Emblem Awakening came out in April 19, 2012 in Japan, February 4th, 2013 in America, and April 19, 2013 in Europe. One big reason why this game was such a huge hit is because this game had many accessibility options for new players who never played Fire Emblem before. The game still had some options to satisfy all the existing players, so best of both worlds. Next we have Fire Emblem Fates. This is a really weird one. Why I say weird? Well, you will see. Imagine this game like Pokemon games. It was split into 3 games. Yes, 3, not 2. And they are called Fire Emblem Birthright, Conquest and Revelations. If that's the case, why do I call it just Fates? Well, we will get there when we get there. You see, Intelligent System did made a for Fire Emblem Fate game called just Fire Emblem Fates Special Edition. What is pretty much Fire Emblem Conquest, Birthright and Revelations in one package. Basically dual package of Pokemon, only not dual but trio package. I know it sounds crazy, but roll with it. The game did pretty well and sold over 2.8 million units, but let's be honest here, they split the game into 3 games, so obviously did better, but yeah, I mean... Obviously some hardcore fans of the series got all 3 games because yeah, that's what hardcore fans do, and that obviously boosted the sales and so on and so on. Either way, the game did well. It's a little bit confusing and even worse considering that the game's choice actually impacts the story. So to get all 3 stories from all 3 perspectives, you need to buy all 3 games. The directors of Fire Emblem Fates are Kohei Maeda and Genki Yokota. Fire Emblem Birthright and Fire Emblem Conquest released in June 25, 2015 in Japan, February 19, 2016 in America, and May 20, 2016 in Europe. Fire Emblem Fates Revelations on the other hand released slightly later in July 9, 2015 in Japan, March 10, 2016 in America and in June 9, 2016 in Europe. Next we have Tokyo Mirage Session FE, and yes, this game has no Fire Emblem in the name, but it's still a Fire Emblem game. Well, technically the game has Fire Emblem in the name. The FE stands for Fire Emblem. It was actually supposed to be a crossover between Fire Emblem and Shin Megami Tensei, what was a brilliant idea if you ask me. In the end, the game turned out to be more Shin Megami Tensei gameplay wise with Fire Emblem elements, but also not really SMT because the game was missing SMT characters. This is a really weird crossover because it's not SMT but also not Fire Emblem, it's more of a unique game. This is also the worst selling quote-unquote Fire Emblem game ever. It sold 39,182 copies worldwide. This number also includes both physical and digital sales. Yes, you heard me correctly, only 39,000. The game came out in December 26, 2015 in Japan, in June 24, 2016 in both America and Europe, and the game came also out on the Nintendo Switch much later in January 17, 2020. Next on our list we have Fire Emblem Heroes. It's a smartphone game, but it's still Fire Emblem. It was downloaded 14.1 million times. It's a free app and I never played Heroes, but considering it's free, I understand why it's downloaded so often, so yeah. It came out in February 2, 2017 on both Android and iOS, and the main directors of Heroes are Kohei Amenda and Shingo Matsushita. Next we have Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia. It's the remake of the second Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem Gaiden. It came out in April 20th, 2017 in Japan and in May 19, 2017 in America and Europe. The main directors of Echoes are Toshiyuki Kusakihara, Kenta Nakanishu and Genki Yokata. Fire Emblem Echoes sold terribly with only 197,344 copies sold. It's one of the worst selling Fire Emblem games so far. Still a really cool remake, worth checking out. Next we have Fire Emblem Warriors. If we don't count Tokyo Mirage Session FE, then this is technically the first Fire Emblem spin-off game. This is a Warriors aka Musou game in the universe of Fire Emblem. The game was actually positively received and sold pretty well for a spin-off game. It sold over 1 million units worldwide. The game released in September 28, 2017 in Japan and worldwide in October 20, 2017. The director of this game was Hiroya Isuda, and let's move on to the next game. Next we have the best-selling Fire Emblem game ever, Fire Emblem Three Houses. This game blew up so much, everyone knew about it, even your grandmother, and for a good reason. This was an amazing game. First of all, the release date. The game released in July 26, 2019 worldwide. So yes, this was the first Fire Emblem game we got to play with our good old friends in Japan together. The main directors of Three Houses are Toshiyuki Kusakihara and Genki Yokata. The game sold over 3.8 million units worldwide, what was unheard of from a tactical strategy RPG. Those games are mostly seen as niche games. I am glad that more people are joining the RPG trend, and the fact that even subgenre, even niche subgenre like the tactical RPG genre can get so much fame, so much praise, it's amazing. Next we have Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes. This is obviously a warrior game, a spin-off game in the Fire Emblem series, this time within the world of Three Houses. Obviously milking the cow until it's dry. I don't blame you, Intelligent System, this is actually a intelligent move after all. If you liked Three Houses, you will most likely enjoy this game, and this game sold pretty well. It sold over 1 million units worldwide. The game released worldwide in June 24, 2022, and the main director of this game is Hayato Ibata. And now we are almost done. We have finally come to the last entry, what is coming up soon or is already out. I have no idea if I will finish this video before or after the release of this game, and I am obviously talking about Fire Emblem Engage. Fire Emblem Engage, it's the newest installment in the Fire Emblem series. It's releasing in January 20th, 2023 worldwide. I hope you are hyped for this game as much as I am, and I wish you a wonderful time playing Fire Emblem Engage. So yeah guys, this was my history of Fire Emblem. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, maybe give this small little virgin a subscribe. And with this out of the way, I wish you all a wonderful day. Sayonara my good old Fire Emblem friends. Ciao, 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 and ciao.